Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Teachers demand education reform. Agriculture Minister defends support for farmers. And later in sports, Grand Slam Track League increases athlete costs. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. For decades, teachers have been advocating for significant investments in the country's education system. Frustrated by the Education Ministry's lack of adequate support, the JTA has now turned to external assistance.
Is Jamaica's education sector faltering due to a lack of support? It's the question which has been left on the minds of many Jamaicans following reports of lackluster performances in exit exams both at the primary and secondary levels of the education system. That has led to repeated calls from stakeholders in the sector for improved strategic investments. It's why the Jamaica Teachers Association, JTA, has reached out to the international body Education International to assist. Dr. Mark Smith is president of the Jamaica Teachers Association.
Which is in essence a campaign designed to mobilize public support around the need for strategic investments in education. We believe that this is truly a game changer in being able to galvanize cross-sectorial support for education. It is so important in an era in which there is massive tectonic movements happening in the geopolitical space. It's important for Jamaica to really find our footing.
Last month, the Teaching Association body launched its Go Public Fund Education campaign. Now, interestingly, Dr. Smith says it is not actually a monetary fund. So how does it operate?
It's really designed as a campaign to get the political parties to talk about how they will strategically invest in education. And what I always tell people is an investment in education is investment in the people of Jamaica, and that is so needed. Again, we're not talking about just throwing money at a problem. We're talking about strategic investments. And what we have today in our education conference at Ocean Coral Spring Hotel is another example of how we could direct those funds. It also requires private partnership with the public sector to get this done. Government alone can't achieve this.
Dr. Smith further noted that the economic fortunes which the country is now enjoying can only be maintained through significant investments in human capital.
Where the world is going is moving towards a knowledge-based, service-driven economies. Yes, they're manufacturing, but those often are not where the high-paying jobs are. With the power of automation coming on board, you're going to find that human service-related jobs are where a lot more of the money is going to be.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Executive Director of the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, Audley Gordon, is distancing the agency from a brewing dispute involving street cleaners in St. Mary. The workers withdrew their service today, claiming that they are not being assigned sufficient hours, a situation they say has significantly affected their earnings. According to the workers, they are employed through the NSWMA's office in Ocheria, St. Anne.
As I know it, we would work 1 month or 6 weeks, pertaining on the amount of time we have to do the journey, the space that I'm in charge of. It's only two weeks we're getting off of the program, while Portland getting 1 month and 2 weeks at time, 6 months, 6 weeks I should say. And down Oceanside has continuously been cutting. So we are the underdogs, I should say.
Then we were told we'd work on Tuesday, no work. Then it put off to Wednesday, no work. We haven't worked any at all up until this moment, this minute, this Wednesday morning. Because every time you get a call, it work put off.
TVJ News sought a comment from Rick Bartley, who the workers say employed them. However, calls to his phone went unanswered. We further made queries to the NSWMA Executive Director, who revealed he is unaware of who Mr. Bartley is. The St. Catherine Municipal Corporation has urged to closely monitor the treatment of its domestic water supplies. The issue was raised during the Public Health and Sanitation Committee meeting this month.
Most times, the water supplies is not adequately treated, and therefore we're having a bacteriological count, and it is bringing down the parish average. For the municipal supplies, we visited 9 in the month of March, and we also checked them for chlorine residual. Of the samples analyzed, 22% showed negative chlorine residual. So we are asking that you make a special effort to make sure these waters are properly treated.
Meanwhile, the Public Health Department also expressed concern about the growing number of water stores operating across the parish.
In the last 2 years, we have moved from 9 to 32. We want the council to help us to identify them so that we can better monitor them. Also, one of the strategic plans that we have for 2025 is that the water trucks will be licensed as food establishments.
Agriculture Minister Floyd Green continues to reject claims by the opposition that the government isn't providing farmers with enough support to grow and succeed. He was speaking at the Montpelier Agricultural and Industrial Show in St. James on Monday. Details in this report. Agriculture Minister Floyd Green has acknowledged that the agriculture sector continues to face long-standing challenges, but insists that the ministry has been actively working to tackle them. Addressing the suggestion of a special agriculture development fund, Mr. Green said additional financial support is not currently necessary at this time. He says the sector has been finding alternative ways to manage effectively.
I hear people speak about a fund for agriculture, and yes, there was a time that you had to establish a fund to be able to do the things that you want to do. But I think when they look at it, and I heard it being bandied about that a fund of about $2.5 billion for agriculture. Let me put it in perspective. This year, we are spending directly into agriculture over $6 billion. So when a man speaks about a fund that would be less than we're spending now, it does not move agriculture forward.
As it relates to the country's food importation bill, Mr. Green says reductions have already begun and further decreases are anticipated in the near future.
And yes, we agree. We want to be able to feed ourselves in almost everything. And we are making some good strides. You know, we've reduced the importation of onion significantly. We've improved onion production over the last 4 years by 780%. Where we used to supply about 22% of onion, and this year we're pushing to 50%, and we will move to get to the 100%.
Mr. Green also said that efforts are being made in other critical areas, particularly in predial larceny.
It used to be that if we get catch, it's 250,000 maximum, 6 months in prison maximum. We said that is too small. We've already moved that. 3 million, 3 years if you are caught, especially on things like transporting agricultural produce, and you cannot say where you get it from. The other thing that we're bringing this year is our agricultural wardens. More boots on the ground in areas where we have a problem with predial larceny. We have already started recruitment. We have about 200 waiting to be trained, and we want to roll out the first 100 this year.
Meanwhile, Mr. Green says there are plans in the pipeline to boost horticulture in Jamaica. He says the goal is to establish at least one botanical garden in every parish.
We already have Castleton, we already have Sikota, we have Bath, but we don't have any down here in St. James. Mr. Dyer, you would know that all over the world people travel to visit botanical gardens. So we have tasked the public gardens team, and I'm happy to announce that we're going to be establishing a botanical gardens in St. James, in Montpelier. We've already identified 50 acres of land that we're going to start the work on this year, and it is beautiful. It all have waterfalls. So you can look forward. Give us a year or so, you will have a new botanical gardens to visit, to bring out your family.
With general elections approaching, there is growing pressure for a political ombudsman to be appointed. One civil society group argues that the government lacks the credibility to effectively address the issue. More in this report. As the general elections draw closer, civil society groups are intensifying calls for the appointment of a political ombudsman. Speaking on Beyond the Headlines Tuesday, Daniel Archer, Principal Director of National Integrity Action, has once again criticized the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, ECJ. She says the ECJ has been inactive in fulfilling the responsibilities of the political ombudsman.
Have we seen them actively overseeing or monitoring the electoral activities? We've heard allegations of voter buying. We've now had the situation of the banners. There are other situations that have come across because we are in the season of elections. Have we heard them say anything? So having not heard them say anything about what the mechanism is, what the process is, whether or not an individual, not any of the commissions, and whether or not an individual has been appointed to oversee the responsibilities and the roles of a political ombudsman. We haven't seen any of that.
Ms. Archer says the government currently lacks the credibility needed to effectively address the situation.
I believe it was Minister Chuck who said, let us have a political ombudsman in place without any political considerations, because this body can perform this role with independence, with fairness, and with credibility and integrity that they've done in the past. Regrettably, they have not acted in the role of political ombudsman in the past, and so far they have neither demonstrated any independence, they have not taken an opportunity to speak to the public or give the public any indication that they can be fair in such matters and act without bias.
Former political ombudsman Donna Parchment Brown is also renewing calls for the repeal of the amendment. She agrees that the office of the political ombudsman is essential, especially given the current state of affairs, which she describes as concerning.
I recently had access to a form which has been created by the OPO ECJ to take complaints, and it is a digital form, lots of personal information from the person complaining. And in fact, the only other action I've seen is where the director of elections terminated with 3 days' notice 2 members of staff with just 3 days' notice to go on retirement, and not even making decisions about making the staff redundant so they could be paid for their between 5 and 20 years of service to the people of Jamaica.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. It's now time for the Business Minute.
The Bank of Jamaica says on April 29 it will be borrowing another $5 billion for almost 15 years to help fund the country's budget. Investors who are willing to lend will receive a benchmark investment note paying an interest rate of 8.25% per annum. The interest on the instrument, which will also be paid every 6 months, will be taxable at 25% per annum, while the smallest amount which can be purchased is also $1,000. U.S. President Donald Trump is softening two of his most contentious economic positions, but a new report shows it might be too little too late. He says the tariff on many Chinese imports eventually won't be, quote, anywhere near, end quote, the current level. It's 145% after his repeated hikes. Mr. Trump also appears to be walking back his social media post that says the Federal Reserve Chair's termination can't come fast enough. The change of tone follows yesterday's grim report from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. It forecasts a global economic slowdown of 0.5% year over year. Now it predicts an even bigger hit to the U.S. economy given Mr. Trump's tariffs. For the Business Minute, I'm Shane Masters.
Now let's see what's coming up in tonight's health report. In the next edition of the health report, we look at achalasia.
The treatment begins with accurate diagnosis. And as I said, sometimes the diagnosis is delayed if we don't think about it. Usually the diagnosis begins with imaging, a barium swallow, tends to show failure of entry or very little what we call a rat tail or bird beak deformity in the lower esophagus, and very little contrast going through into the stomach. This is usually followed up by imaging to ensure, by an upper GI endoscopy, to ensure that this is not caused by a tumor and that this is just narrowing.
That's the health report in Primetime News at 7. And now for today's healthy living tip. Eat foods that are easier to swallow. Divide meals into smaller portions and eat more frequently. Chew food carefully to help break it down and make swallowing easier. And drink liquids with meals to help lubricate food. Now the top regional and international stories.
In the region, St. Lucia's Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre has presented a $2.05 billion EC budget to Parliament, extending a tax amnesty program allowing for improved allowances for nurses, while insisting that his administration will remain focused as it prepares for a general election in the coming months. He said the budget will be financed through recurrent revenue of $1.6 billion EC, capital revenue of $6.68 million EC, grants totaling $93.3 million EC, treasury bills and bonds estimated at $78.1 million EC, and loans and external funding of $257.3 million EC. On the international scene, a federal judge has slammed the Justice Department on Tuesday for its handling of the Kilmar Garcia case. He's the man the Donald Trump administration mistakenly deported to El Salvador last month. District Judge Paula Zinnes previously ordered the Trump administration to facilitate his return. Now, the Justice Department is engaged in a discovery process to determine if the administration is complying with that order. Zinnes ruled Tuesday that Justice Department lawyers are not complying with their obligation to produce information. She wrote that they've sought refuge behind vague and unsubstantiated assertions of privilege.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return.